Yeah, sure thing.
Hey, you sold that car yet?
Yeah, sold it to Carvana.
Oh, I thought you were selling to that guy.
The guy who wanted to pay me in foreign currency, no interest, over 36 months? Yeah, no. Carvana gave me an offer in minutes, picked it up, and paid me on the spot. It was so convenient.
Just like that.
Yeah?
No hassle.
None.
That is super convenient.
Sell your car to Carvana and swap hassle for convenience. Pickup fees may apply.
What's up, y'all? It's Joe Budden. It's my favorite part of the holidays, Prize Picks. The best place to get real money action while watching your favorite sports. Join now because this holiday season, Prize Picks is giving millions in player rewards.
Download the Prize Picks app today and use code TACKLE and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code TACKLE on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. Prize Picks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. Must be present in certain states. Visit prizepicks.com for restrictions and details.
Happy New Year, Retrospectors. Rebecca here, and before we return with new episodes on the 6th of January, we're all choosing our favourite episodes from last year. And my favourite episode from 2024 was TV's first soap opera, and it was all about These Are My Children, whose 4-week run on NBC in 1949 made it the first ever TV soap opera. There were loads of things I liked about this. One was the fact that it was being shown live, 15 minutes every day, and because the actors didn't have much time to learn their lines, they were sometimes clearly reading them from blackboards that had been placed out of sight of the camera. If they really choked, they had to cut the sound feed so that a prompter could give them the next line. I love stuff like that about the early days of TV, but also I think what stuck out to me about this one is that the creator, Irna Phillips, really inspiring character. You know, she had a hard scrabble background full of traumatic challenges right out of a soap opera, you know, a childhood of poverty and out of wedlock pregnancy, and through that managed to go to college and finally achieve her dream of working in showbiz as a writer on radio serials. And in 1930, she created Painted Dreams. That was the first ever soap opera. It was on the radio. It was the first radio show really targeting a female audience, featuring female leads and real life problems. And she went on then to oversee what became a soap opera empire. At her peak, she was writing 4 shows simultaneously. It really puts researching retrospective episodes into perspective. Anyway, I hope you enjoy it. But before we play it again, just a reminder that Today in History is a completely independent show, which means we can only make it with your support. So why not join Club Retrospectors? It's less than £1 a week, and you get an ad-free feed, a brand new episode each Sunday, weekly bonus bits, behind-the-scenes content, and the pleasure of knowing that you are supporting us in making this show. Just visit patreon.com/retrospectors or sign up now from our show page on Apple Podcasts and get your free 7-day trial of Club Retrospectors now. Thanks, and here's the episode.
It's January 31st, 1949, and another remarkable event is about to be uncovered by Arion, Rebecca, and Olly, the Retrospectors.
It lasted only 4 weeks on air, but NBC's These Are My Children, which premiered Today in History in 1949, was groundbreaking, partly because it was written by a woman, partly because it was deliberately slow-paced so that housewives could answer the door whilst it was on and not miss a storyline, but mainly because it was on TV and not the radio, the world's first televised soap opera.
Yeah, as the title implies, it was a family drama centering on Mrs. Heenahan, an Irish widow running a boarding house in Chicago, and her 3 adult children, and most of the scenes took place in the same 3-room set. And a contemporary article about the show in Pathfinder magazine gives us the tidbit that the title came from the creator, Irna Phillips' habit of saying, when introducing her young son and daughter, "These are my children," which I was like, well, who wouldn't say that? I mean, that's exactly the same thing that you would say. But the same article, I found this interesting. The same article also refers to viewers of the programme as lookers, which shows just how new all of this was.
Yeah, the article says, last week television caught the dreaded disease of radio, soap operitis. Trade publication Variety found the show to be of no visual interest, but television soap operas, which were largely being created by women and for women, were soon attracting huge audiences and driving enormous network revenue. So despite the sniffiness of the critics, actually these couldn't be ignored because networks needed them.
I mean, it was of no visual interest. Irna Phillips, the creator of These Are My Children and many more soap operas to come, which we'll get into, said herself in her memoirs, quote, "The major challenge for me in writing for television was to write scripts that called for action. For 19 years, I'd written scripts for actors who talked into a microphone. Now, scenes had to be written with a visual concept in mind. Television also brought another major change to the dramatic serial. It was now of paramount importance how actors looked." So, I mean, they were all experimenting. She was the queen of soap operas on the radio, but this new format of doing it on telly, they were experimenting as they went, and it was a bit of a low-paid experiment as well. You know, this was a woman who was earning $250,000 a year writing for radio, but the budget for this, the actors were getting $20 per episode.
Yeah, and they were performing it live as well. It doesn't seem like much compensation when you're performing a daily live 15-minute installment, with really the only options if they forgot lines were either to ad-lib or, in a case of absolute desperation, the sound feed could be momentarily cut for a second so that the prompter could jump in and give them the next line. I mean, we can't, unfortunately, no episodes have survived. You know, we've talked before about how much early TV has been lost, so we have to rely on reviews, and they were pretty scathing. There was a good one in the New York Times from Jack Gould, who was pretty unsparing, not least in referring to NBC and Phillips as culprits. And his review opens with an observation that one unwelcome difference from radio soaps is, quote, "you have to look at the thing." He goes on to call out a litany of flaws in the episode, which I think will still seem familiar to the modern TV viewer, from stereotyped characters to stale tropes to painful expository dialogue. One element that viewers thankfully no longer have to suffer through, though, is the show's practice of writing key lines on blackboards off camera. As we mentioned, it was live. Says Gould, "The harried performers looked as though they were gazing off into the horizon, expecting a plane to come in on a 3-point landing right in the middle of Mom Heenahan and all her troubles. More likely, though, that's next year's plot."
Well, of course, they're the wrong kind of actors, aren't they? That's the thing, because, you know, if you took the radio actors and put them on telly, these were actors who would be used to literally having the script in front of them at all times, sometimes playing multiple characters, and no thought at all had been given to how they look, as we said earlier. If you took film actors, they wouldn't be willing to do it for the money that was on offer. And if you took, frankly, like model-turned actors, the kind of people that ended up in soap operas later, who had been cast for their looks, they wouldn't have been able to compete in the live environment. So what you ended up with was stage actors who had never been on telly before. So it's not a surprise that this was an odd-looking performance.
I mean, it's funny that it attracted reviews that were saying that it was unbelievable or clunky, given that Irna Phillips herself was writing from her own true life, and pretty much everything up until this point she'd been doing the same thing, because she'd been born into this large German Jewish family in Chicago and faced, you know, early challenges, you'd call them, with her father's death at the age of 8, leaving her mother to raise 10 children. Cue the plot of all of her soap operas from the very start up until this one. And she claimed that she'd been a lonely child and was given hand-me-down clothes and dolls and things, and started making up long and involved stories for her dolls to then live out. So that was how she entertained herself.
Yeah, she got pregnant at the age of 19. She was abandoned by her boyfriend, gave birth to a stillborn baby, and then got into college and finally went from being a school teacher to trying her hand in the glamorous world of radio. So she really lived a life that was extremely fitting for a soap opera legend.
And then she was in a coma and then ultimately came back to life.
But her evil twin had married her husband.
Right. No, she'd been an aspiring actress herself, but then ended up working as a school teacher, but still had these dreams of somehow ending up in showbiz. She actually then turned to radio and started out just volunteering, working for free, before then turning her attention to script writing. And the first success that she had was this show, Sue and Irene, which she was basically just ad-libbing a bunch of characters alongside another actress, Irene Wicker. But then she came up with the idea that really made her, Painted Dreams, which was really heralded as the first ever soap opera. The show we're talking about today was the first TV soap opera, but Painted Dreams was regarded as the first soap opera, full stop.
And then she went on to Today's Children between 1932 and 1936, which featured the first amnesia storyline ever in a soap opera, a staple now, and The Guiding Light in 1937, which featured the first illegitimate baby in a soap opera, again, a bit of a staple now. The Guiding Light is fascinating because it really underscores her cynicism about television, because she didn't stop transmitting it on the radio because she just wasn't convinced that it would take off on telly. And she was simultaneously transmitting episodes of Guiding Light on radio and TV in the 1950s. But she needn't have feared because it didn't end its run on television until 2009. It took 72 years to tell that story.
Wow.
At one point, she was writing 4 soap operas at the same time. A 1943 profile of Phillips, who was 47 at this time, noted that she dictates annually 2 million words, enough to fill 27 books. And she really had to keep going in the face of a lot of early initial skepticism from executives and sponsors, because radio dramas, at the time when she started writing Painted Dreams, that was in 1930, it was still the fairly early days of radio, and dramas centering on the emotional lives of women just didn't exist. But it was such an instant hit that, there was this realization that, wow, there's this huge audience of women at home who want to listen to stories about the ordinary lives of women, or at least the relatively ordinary lives of women. And so Painted Dreams found a sponsor. Initially, it didn't have a sponsor because there was so much skepticism about the format. Procter & Gamble came in. And now this is important because the sponsors of this emerging genre naturally tended to be the kind of companies who are looking to sell things to housewives. Hence the term soap opera. Many of the early ones were sponsored by soap manufacturers.
Yeah, the term before that had been horse operas, that were sort of demeaning descriptions of budget westerns. And, it just works for the kind of genre we're in. But also, despite the fact that she was writing these rough and ready shows for an audience that wasn't taken terribly seriously, she was very good at certain things that have remained kind of staples of the soap opera genre. She became known for her trademark cliffhangers and the use of organ music to create moods, as well as crossover episodes where characters from one of her shows might appear on another show, thus linking them in, a sort of Marvel extended universe type of a thing, but way before Marvel was doing it. And she also really shunned sensationalism. She preferred to focus on kind of real life families and then talk about difficult subjects like adultery, adoption, and divorce, these things that mainstream TV shows weren't really covering off.
Yes, and that's the thing I think that people now are praising her role and what soap operas did for the kind of pop cultural conversation are finally getting their heads around. The genre was dismissed for so many decades, often by men because it was created by women and for women and was a showcase for women writers and was in a domestic setting. And actually what Phillips was doing right back then in the 1950s was dealing with social issues that other popular art wasn't. She used to write to charities and organisations and say, what is your problem and what can we do to help you with it on one of our programmes? And she would then take the issues that were affecting people that weren't being reported and put them in a highly relatable way into drama, so that suddenly then people in very conservative parts of America, for example, would be encountering for the first time a dilemma about an illegitimate baby on their screens and relate to the people involved.
The first British soap was actually made for American audiences. It was a radio serial called The Robinson Family. It began airing in 1941, initially under the title Frontline Family, and it was made for broadcast in the US to increase sympathy for Britain's wartime plight. It followed a family in the UK and the things they were going through.
It's a nice reversal, given that I think Australia was pretty much making Neighbours and Home and Away exclusively for you lot.
Tomorrow.
You've got pigeons, pheasants, peacocks, larks, thrushes.
Truly no bird was safe.
Ditch the ads and get a Sunday episode when you join Club Retrospectors. Patreon.com/retrospectors.
Kroger Delivery makes it easy to do your holiday shopping in a jingle. There might be a lot on your to-do list, but thanks to Kroger Delivery, you can get everything you need delivered straight to your door at the same great prices you'd find in store. Our refrigerated trucks always ensure that your groceries arrive fresh. And right now, you can save $20 on your first order of $75 or more and get free delivery with a Boost membership. Restrictions apply. See site for details. Kroger, fresh for everyone.